Hi, everyone. My name is Pai from VC team at BTNS, and I'm excited to be here with Nikos, founder and CEO of Metrica. Nikos, hi, Nikos. I'm glad you could be with us today.
Hello, hi, Pai.
Hi.
Pleasure to be here.
So before we delve into more detail about Metrica, I would like to understand more about your journey. You had a long experience in telecommunications before you entering the blockchain space and founding Metrica. So could you briefly tell us how did you get into this space and what led you to Metrica?
Yeah, absolutely, my pleasure. So as you said, I spent more than a decade in the telecommunications space, and through that I got exposed very early to kind of big data sets that the telecom providers had, and the fact that data lakes started getting formed. Data mining and analytics start on big data sets started becoming the main thing by which the telecom service providers would extract intelligence. They would look for data signatures, and they would try to leverage all the data to make their operations more efficient, to understand why the network was less performant, less resilient, and how to improve that, both to improve their operations and realize efficiencies, but also to improve the customer experience. So I had the pleasure to work very early on projects for very large tier one service providers like AT&T, Verizon, Comcast, CenturyLink, and so on. And that provided kind of the background of my knowledge around how that space operates. The second part, which kind of ties that to the blockchain space, is that historically, whenever the application or the network has been very important and critical, such as the blockchain networks, there has always been specialized monitoring analytics tools that make sure that there is service assurance, that the network operates as it should, and the applications should do the same. So by combining basically those two things, I came to kind of realize that the blockchain space, as it evolves, there will be operational requirements and there will be a need to analyze operational data and help make those networks more efficient, more resilient. And that extends to the applications that will be built on top of the blockchain networks as well. There is a clear need for, as those applications scale up and become more popular, become more critical, there is the need to analyze data in real time and extract insights for the networks. So that kind of provides kind of a high level sense of how kind of my mind got wired through the years.
Got it. Yeah, I agree with you. I think that's an quite a unique experience you have, and I think today we see the number of blockchain applications is exploding, but we do not see that many tools to kind of help them manage the operational performance. So what are some of the key problems or common gaps that you see across blockchain projects in terms of how they manage operational performance, and how can Metrica help closing these gaps?
Well, I think most commonly what we see is that a lot of the applications are at a POC stage, and they start thinking about operational intelligence when they start scaling up, when they start becoming more critical in terms of their operations. And that I think happens through a combination of things, either by sheer volume of requests that they get from their users as they get adopted, or by some criticality on the user experience. So when applications start, thinking about the latency they get in terms of the finalization times on their blocks, when they think about the resilience of their network and their nodes, and when they start kind of trying to figure out and quickly troubleshoot and debug whether it's their node, whether it's the network, whether it's the application that is faulty, then there is a need for specialized tooling and infrastructure that in real time you can understand the health of both your infrastructure, but also the broader blockchain network. So I think it's a common gap that at the beginning of an applications or a network's kind of life cycle, people tend to focus more on the use cases, focus more on cryptography, on the primitives. But as those things scale up, I think the operational requirements increase, and then operational intelligence becomes a natural thing. The other part is that I think at the beginning of those things, at the early stage, most of the companies go down the path where there is data, but all of that data is being collected and not analyzed operationally, and it's only being used kind of as a post-mortem when things go wrong. But as things become critical, kind of real-time analysis of that data and kind of deep insights become more important. So that's kind of the area I think where the gaps are, and obviously I think the traditional monitoring tools and analytics tools that exist out there, there is a very big gap between kind of using them off the shelf and kind of customizing them for the needs of blockchain networks.
Got it. Can you maybe just elaborate a bit more on what key metrics or features that Metrica provides that can help monitoring these operational performance?
Yeah, absolutely. So what Metrica provides is that we run a number of nodes on the blockchain networks. We extract data and metrics from the blockchain nodes and the infrastructure that the applications and the node runners are running. We collect metrics from the applications as well, and we have all those layers in the data lake. And the data and the metrics that we collect go across the stack, from network metrics such as kind of quality of connectivity between the nodes or quality of connectivity between the application and the API endpoints, to blockchain metrics such as consensus performance, gossiping, proposals, finalization times, and all of that gets combined and cross-analyzed in a way that it provides a very holistic view of the operational health of the blockchain network. So this is extremely useful, not only for the protocol vendors, for the protocol teams, but also for infrastructure runners, for node hosting companies, and then for applications that run on top, such as exchanges, banks, financial institutions, and any other applications for verticals such as in gaming or any other kind of verticals that are leveraging blockchain technology underneath.
Got it.
In some sense, it's a very kind of critical component. I would go as far as say that there is an operational layer on top of running kind of any infrastructure, where we provide the critical inputs on how to kind of perform or how to operate in an excellent manner. And operational excellence, as I mentioned before, was not a given in blockchain networks. Anyone who is familiar with blockchain networks realize there is a lot of effort of keeping things up and running and keeping them being performant. And that's where Metrica provides a very kind of foundational layer of operational intelligence.
So it sounds like Metrica aims to be a one-stop solution to kind of monitor the health of the system. Okay.
Correct. And if you think, Pi, about what is happening today there are mostly rewards and incentives for people participating in blockchain networks. But there is a layer on top that is not only operating, but pushing for those networks to be more performant, more resilient, more according to the operational requirements of the applications and the networks themselves.
Got it. Could you provide examples of events or DeFi crises that could have been prevented with Metrica?
Yeah, absolutely. There are there are basically two buckets of events that Metrica is very helpful with. The one bucket of event is as a preventive kind of intelligence platform. So by monitoring in real time and by analyzing in real time networks, we can detect degradations in the operational health of the network. And by doing that, that helps the operator kind of optimize the network or the infrastructure that they're running to avoid failure. An example of that was a network where we recently identified block interval times that with increasing frequency were longer in that network. And by identifying the source of that, we eliminated those kind of large blocks. So the network had higher performance, was more resilient, and that improved also the application experience from having shorter block finalization times. So definitely kind of the one bucket is having deep visibility in real time and preventing things from getting worse. The second bucket is when things go wrong, you have a very quick way of identifying what went wrong, and that helps a lot with quick recovery times. So we've seen cases of blockchain networks going down that take hours and sometimes days to recover. So by having that visibility and not doing a post-mortem at that time helps a lot with recovering very quickly from such events. So all in all, there is kind of the proactive, I would say, kind of type of contribution, and there is also kind of the quick recovery from any events.
Understand. So it sounds like it's something similar to the non-blockchain world where application management, performance management is kind of there, the solutions there, and it's large protocol with key players like Datadog. What are some of the key similarities and difference between the traditional solution and the one in blockchain? And what are some of the technologies that you can lift from the traditional one? And what are some of the new things that you have to develop specifically for blockchain?
Yeah, so the traditional, I would say, monitoring space to a large extent is application agnostic. So you can monitor databases, you can monitor compute, you can monitor VMs, you can monitor a bunch of things. The main difference, I think, with blockchain networks is twofold. The one is that you have a very specific kind of protocol that you need to go in further depth to understand the performance of that. So there is a lot of understanding, as I mentioned before, on how the protocol works, how the gossiping works, how the consensus, how the participation. So you can analyze that based on the expectations of the protocol on what good performance looks like. So I would say you go deeper into the rabbit hole in terms of analyzing and developing analytics and intelligence that is very specific to the protocols. Obviously, there is a lot of standardization between protocols, as there are common areas that we have identified, which makes very easy to transition from protocol to protocol. The second bucket, which I think is very, very important, is that all the monitoring infrastructure that exists today has been meant for single owner infrastructure. In that sense, what you're monitoring with the traditional tools, typically you are the owner of that infrastructure. Blockchain breaks new ground with the infrastructure being shared by multiple owners who operate in the network. It's not only the protocol teams, it's the node runners, it's the node hosting companies, it's the applications that all have stake in running the network in an optimal manner. So in that way, Metrica is not only providing deep insights into kind of how the network works, but we're also facilitating the sharing of the knowledge within the multiple operators on the network. So we are designing our platform by thinking about how kind of the information can be shared and how the collaboration can improve operations across multiple players that operate on the same network. So these are kind of the key difference, I would say. The things that we can leverage, though, I think from traditional monitoring tools, is that the real-time data, big data analysis. There are a number of tools that all the traditional players are using, and we don't need to reinvent the wheel there, but we can leverage the advancements in monitoring technology that exist.
Yeah, I think the decentralized nature of the blockchain is kind of unique and pose challenge to how you kind of monitor the operational and overall. So it sounds like Metrica could be beneficial to several players in blockchain ecosystem. And I read the news that you launched Metrica's Alert Hub with Algorand Foundation in Q1 this year. And aside from Foundation, who are your target customers, and what is the type of project or protocol that should consider using Metrica?
Yeah, so I would say that all the players that are operationally involved in a blockchain network are Metrica's customers. So starting from the protocol teams, the foundations, the ecosystem participants, the node hosting companies, the node runners, and extending that to the applications that run on top of the network. So I would say the audience is very broad, but if I were to kind of go back to what we discussed before, I think it's also kind of people who and entities that run operations in production that have critical operations. I think that's the audience that I would say prioritizes the needs and kind of is what you would see kind of being Metrica's customers today.
Got it. So yeah, that's quite a wide range of customers.
Yeah, I believe that everyone who runs kind of critical operations on blockchain kind of across the spectrum is potentially Metrica's customer.
And I think most analytic platforms today serve mainly Ethereum, which is understandable given the large number of users there. So, but as an operational intelligence provider like Metrica, I understand that you have to cover a wide range of blockchain projects. How do you pick your development priorities?
Our goal is to cover all the blockchain protocols that exist, the majority of those protocols that exist today. As I mentioned before, there are many common areas when analyzing the performance of a blockchain protocol, and the other part I would say that is kind of important is also kind of the protocols that have higher operational requirements and those that have more workload in production. So the protocols that have more developed application ecosystems, those that are scaling faster, and those that are moving to more critical operations are typically the ones that I would say we would prioritize on our roadmap. But eventually we plan to cover the majority of the blockchain protocols out there.
Got it. So I think right now we have an idea of Metrica's offerings and its value to blockchain ecosystem in helping preventing and recovering faster when something's happened. I would like to touch on a competitive landscape. How do you see the competition in this area and today, and how do you play out in the future? And what are the advantages of Metrica to thrive in the long run?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, I think what is interesting here is that the blockchain has such specific needs and is of such critical importance that I think Metrica is leading the way in defining what operational intelligence and how operational monitoring is happening in this space. I think the important thing here is to invite all of the players, the traditional players that exist today, along our journey. I think it's a very long journey on defining the standards by which we kind of monitor at the application layer, interacting with the blockchain, at the node layer, at the infrastructure, at the protocol. And I think that path to me is the challenging path on how we add this layer of operational excellence on top of the protocol, infrastructure, and application operations.
Got it.
In general, I would also add that I think a lot of the times, I think at the operational layer, there isn't a lot of effort going into there. There is mostly the traditional monitoring tools that you mentioned. Most of the analytics that exist today out there, I think, focus solely on ledger data. And they focus typically on the areas of fraud risk and also in workflow automation. But the space that we are, I think, blazing new trails into is that of operational risk and that of improving operations and adding operational excellence in critical areas of blockchain.
So do you see your customers have to use like Metrica with the other ledger data analytical tools, or that's where Metrica aim to shift the customers and just using the Metrica solution?
Well, the ledger data is useful in providing very valuable context around what is the load on the blockchain network, on the infrastructure, and on the application. So the load that is being put on the blockchain network is very useful for cross analysis with other data sets that help us understand the operational health of the network. But in and itself, it's not for us kind of the sole focus of understanding kind of the ledger data itself. We want to understand, for example, what's the mix of smart contracts and mix of single transactions, and how does the network behave at that moment. We seek to understand the load in terms of the blocks, how many transactions there are in those blocks, and cross-analyze that with the behavior of the network at those moments. So it's more informative and provides context to us for the operational behavior and performance of the network, of the components, and of the applications at that time.
Understood. So actually, from listening to you, by offering these operational intelligence, I think Metrica will sit on a valuable operating data of its customers. Do you have any idea on how this data can be further utilized?
The very important part for us and our mission is to extract from that data the intelligence in real time, so that we can improve the operations of the multiple participants there. And one of the main things in doing that is allowing and providing the ability to kind of cross-analyze the data that we collect with data that the users will bring on their own as well. So, for example, if an application has data on the way the application performs and its intended kind of objective, it is very important that that data can be cross-analyzed with the data that our platform collects, both from our own nodes, from other nodes, from the network, so that there is kind of insight that gets extracted for the application. And the same thing happens for everyone who runs a node or runs infrastructure. We want to be able to kind of help cross-analyze that data with other data sets to extract insight. So that's kind of the thinking there. And I think the main focus and the mission for us is, how do we extract the best signal that we can? How can we get the best insights that provide most value to the ecosystem participants? And also the other part is, how can we share that information across the ecosystem? Because if you look at the ecosystem today, by everyone using kind of localized monitoring tools, everyone has a very different insight, and has the information exists in silos. So, for example, when someone sees that their node is down, they have to go to a community forum, or they have to go on a Discord server and start a discussion around what other people are seeing, so that they can understand what's the network-wide view. With Metrica and our platform, this can be shared across the ecosystem instantly. So that's kind of the goal, putting the data in use and being able to kind of add the layers on top that help provide intelligence and sharing across the community.
I think that's interesting value proposition around the data and how to utilize them. I would like to hear your thoughts on the future developments or trends in this space that you hope to see. Like, what are the key technologies that you hope to see more or further develop at Metrica?
Well, one of the areas that I'm very excited about is, as I mentioned before, putting the data in use is very interesting, and extracting the most insight out of the data, either as a standalone or by cross-analyzing, cross-correlating across multiple data sets. The other part that I think is very interesting is how we apply artificial intelligence on the data sets that we have, how we automate not only kind of the insights that we generate, but also kind of the actions that the ecosystem participants can take. To give you an example, how can we create closed loop automation? So, for example, the application owners can know in real time if something is wrong, and automatically they can switch the API endpoint that they are using. How can we know when the nodes need to be upgraded and when not, so that we can apply that kind of type of operational action on the nodes in an automated way? So in some sense, if we can drive kind of robotic type of operations by using the intelligence that Metrica provides, then we can eliminate the man in the loop on a variety of operations, and that can help improve the operational excellence on many kind of aspects of running operations that today require manual intervention. And if you think about kind of the monitoring space today, someone kind of gets alerts or gets insights, and then they go into the server and they have to take some action to fix things. If we can streamline that process, and for things that are pretty obvious and we recognize as patterns from the past, then we can apply the solution in an automated way. So I think that's kind of the boundary towards which we're pushing.
Wow, I think that's very interesting, and I look forward to see the automated action that can happen from Metrica's operational intelligence. So I think we run out of time, Nikos. Thank you so much for sharing with us today. I hope to see you in the next event. Thank you
so much. Bye. Thank you for having me.